then you're ready to bring up your rears. Day long of sitting there hearing speechifiers, but thank you for allowing a scruffy Texas populace to come in here and be a part of this Blue Ribbon Livestock Show. What an honor to be here with my buddy Keith Ellison and John Conyers, my leader, spiritual leader, theological leader, and all things leader. For the great work that he has done for 147 years that he has been I'm just happy to flee the dog show. That good? Yeah, there we go. All right, we're back. Just, you know, it's terrific to be here at Progressive Central as we strategize, organize, harmonize, and mobilize, not to take America back, like the Tea Party-infused Republicans say they'll do, taking America back to the plutocratic rule of the robber barons, but rather to move America forward. Move America forward to the ideals that we represent. The ideals that make America what it really is. Our progressive values of economic fairness, social justice, equal opportunity for all people. That's what America represents. That's what we represent as Democrats. And we've got to stand up to that more than we have been doing. Now, I come to you not merely from Austin, Texas today, but from South Austin, Texas. There's an attitudinal difference on the south side of the city there. Our unofficial slogan is we're all here because we're not all there. And I think we're all here in Charlotte because the Wall Street, corporate, and Republican powers that be, excuse the redundancy in that, are not all there on the critical importance of these unifying democratic values of fairness, justice, opportunity for all. In fact, they're as confused as goats on AstroTurf when it comes to understanding what America represents and what America really is. We've seen their gross confusion when it comes to funding the essential public needs of our American society, and Keith and them were talking about that up here. As the president noted, the super rich create loopholes to avoid paying their fair share of taxes. And then he asked, this was at a crowd in Georgia, and he asked that crowd, do you think the millionaires ought to pay more in taxes than the bus driver or less? And the crowd roared back, more. That was in 1985, and it was Ronald Reagan giving that speech. How far the Republicans have come, huh? In 30 years, we've gone from Ronald Reagan's trickle-down economics to the Koch brothers' tinkle-down economics. What a load of bad news they are. It's hard to fathom right-wing nuttiness these days, but it's not hard to find, is it? Start at the top. Romney says that his career as a financial vulture gives him the know-how to fix our economy. Of course, he uses fix in the same way that a veterinarian uses it. If you're confused on that concept, you might ask your dog. And now here comes Paul Ryan. Nuttier than a planter's processing factory. He wrote a plan to turn Medicare into We Don't Care. And then he said in Tampa at their convention a week ago that we should trust him to save Medicare. I mean, I was born at night, but it wasn't that last night. I'd sooner trust a coyote with my last lamb chop than to trust Medicare to Paul Ryan. Then, of course, we got Todd Aiken, junk science junkie whose insights are about rape are amounting to theological witchcraft, yet he was appointed by the Republican House leaders to be a member of the House Science Committee. And if you think that's impossible to believe, ponder this. Michelle Bachmann is a member of the House Intelligence Committee. Well, that's them. But the question, of course, is who are we? Who is the Democratic Party going to be? And let's face it, our party still has too many weak-kneed, don't rock the rich man's boat, corporate-dependent, pusillanimous Democrats. Pusillanimous is my new favorite word. You can look it up, it's clean. These guys are weaker than Canadian hot sauce when it comes to standing up for the people they're supposed to represent. They oppose and publicly chastise Obama for the things he does right. We've had Democrats oppose the Lilly Ledbetter law. They've chastised Obama for assailing CEO outrageous paychecks. They've opposed his Consumer Finance Protection Agency. They oppose his public option proposal, gay and lesbian rights moves that he has made. They have opposed him and chastised him for calling out the 5 Supreme Court thugs who hijacked our democracy by mugging us with Citizens United decisions. You know, there's a guy named Butch Hancock. He's a singer-songwriter. He lives in Austin as part of a group called the Flatlanders. Jimmy Dale Gilmore, and Joey Lee, and Butch Hancock. They're all great songwriters. And Butch was on our radio show that Susan DeMarco and I had some years ago. And he was explaining to us about growing up out in Lubbock, Texas, about how hard it was as a teenager boy to grow up in that far right-wing, theologically strict, religious country. And he said that they would explain to us that sex was the nastiest, just the filthiest thing that you could be involved with. And you should save it for someone you love. That, I think, might be part of the confusion we're getting out of Washington. But that is where Progressive Democrats of America comes in. Overcoming voter confusion about Democrats by putting forth an unabashed, FDR-style, little d Democratic agenda of percolate up economics, green energy, a living wage, Medicare for all, decentralization of Wall Street and the Wall Street tax, labor law reform, a low-fat diet for the Pentagon, an end to corporate money in our elections, etc., etc., etc. In every one of those cases, the American people overwhelmingly support us. They're overwhelmingly for it. And they're wondering, why is the National Democratic Party not standing more forthrightly for it? That's the importance that PDA represents, is leading us to that bright light, where the people already are. My Hightower Lowdown got distributed to you here. This issue is on the minimum wage. Minimum wage is a disgrace, it says in the title here. And yet, the proposal that John Conyers co-sponsors, that Jesse Jackson Jr. put in to raise the minimum wage to $10 an hour. And we have too many Democrats, oh, well, we could do that, my goodness, that's just outrageous. Outrageous. It would take us back to the buying power of the minimum wage in 1968. That's the advance that we would make by getting $10 an hour. But they said, well, yeah, but the people would never support it. Well, hello, here's a poll from the American Values Survey by the Public Religion Research Institute. Shows that 2/3 of Americans support a $10 an hour minimum wage. 52% of Republicans support a $10 an hour minimum wage. 74% of women, because women are the ones who are making minimum wage overwhelmingly. 73% of 18 to 29-year-olds, the young people, because you know what's happened to their incomes. We've got 61% of white evangelical Protestants supporting a $10 an hour minimum wage, because that's who's in those churches, poor people and working staff. The people are for it, and we're for it. So we've got to push that. We ought to be running on that. That would excite people. That would get people to come vote. Not only are the issues that we're putting forth with good candidates, like Elizabeth Warren and Tammy Baldwin running for the U.S. Senate, like Alan Grayson, who's here, Leslie Messenger, and Bob Zerin, and David Stapira. Not just Democrats, but by God, Democrats. That's what we need. You know? Near my home in Austin, there's an old motel, been there for quite a few years, and they've got an iconic sign out front, a marquee, and it says, no additives, no preservatives, corporate free since 1938. That's the kind of Democrat we need, right there. That's the art Democrat, corporate free. One more thing, we progressive activists have a special chore this November, and that is getting progressives, our side, to turn out and vote for Barack Obama. I know And I hear this everywhere I go, well, he's not one of us. He's disappointed us again and again. He's not promising us anything in a second term. But it's not about him. It's about our movement, about the possibilities that we have to push for a progressive America. Our potential to put a little progress back in progressive. With Romney and Ryan, with the Koch brothers Congress that they would bring in, with the cabinet and the regulators that they would have, we'll be hauled back to a deeply negative, defensive crouch, devoting all of our time, all of our energy, resources, and creativity to fending off the horrors that they would be presenting, losing the grassroots momentum we've developed with hundreds of progressive ideas and campaigns all across the country. That's what it's about. With Obama, at least we get a placeholder, someone who can stall the plutocracy as we organize and mobilize the emerging progressive democracy. That's the importance of Obama right there. That's the reason to vote for him, because he gives us the opportunity to do what we progressives have to do. It's not up to him, it's up to us. We've got to do the heavy lifting at grassroots level. The consultants and pundits assume that the margin of victory this fall in the presidential race is going to be from the middle-of-the-road voters. But that's not right. The margin of victory is going to be us progressives who either stand up or don't. Stand up or don't. And that's our job as progressive activists, is to see that they do stand up, because that gives our movement more momentum and a chance to move forward. We don't always win these things the first time out. And those who are disappointed with Obama, I point out to them, well, you don't get everything the first time, but you make advances. It's incremental. The civil rights movement did not begin with Martin Luther King's speech in 1963 at Lincoln Memorial. It is a movement that was created decades before that, generations before that, of people who fought, bled, and died to make it possible for him to be able to give that speech. And he was not there alone. He was there with more than 100,000 people standing side by side to say this is right. And led to the kind of legislation that made it in advance. Didn't get everything done, but it made it in advance. Lyndon Johnson helped make that happen. Another president who dared to stand up. I spent my youth trying to get Lyndon Johnson out of office over the Vietnam War, not realizing he would be the most progressive president of my lifetime. So sometimes we make some mistakes like that. The three women, Elizabeth Cady Stanton and the others who led the suffrage movement, began in 1848, just last week, celebrated the Women's Year of that movement. None of those three lived to vote. None of them ever cast a ballot. But they created a movement, and other people picked it up and moved it and made it possible to come to fruition with the 19th Amendment. So that's where we are. My friend Willie Nelson puts it, said, I tell you, the early bird might get the worm, but it's the second mouse that gets the cheese. You might want to pencil that out for some of the slower ones here today. So we just got to keep pushing. And that's what this progressive continuum is about. We've made tremendous advances from the founding. We talk about the founders and the great documents, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the Declaration of Independence. But it was not the founders who created democracy. There was very little of it. In fact, in that first presidential election, we chose George Washington to be president. Only 4% of the people were eligible to vote. You were a woman, you couldn't vote. You were Native American, you couldn't vote. African American, you were a slave, you couldn't vote. If you did not own land, you couldn't vote. You were riffraff. So it's not the founders who created democracy, they created the possibility of it. And then in the intervening generations, it's been good people like you who have done the hard work, the insistent work, to extend the democratic possibilities to more and more people. And that's a continuum that we're a part of and that we're advancing onward through this election and into the future with PDA and good groups like that who are represented here today. I've never had to follow a vagina on stage before, but that was yeah, this is progress. But I'll leave you with this, and it's It's from the late great Louis Grizzard, the late great humorist out of the South. And Grizzard said something that we in the South have always known to be true, and that is that there is a great big difference between being naked and being naked. Being naked means you have no clothes on, but being naked, that means you have no clothes on and you are up to something. So that's our challenge right there. We got to get naked together. Thank you very much for what you're doing. Thank you.